Welcome to the Gym Plus Coffee podcast. Welcome to episode 6. I'm Ian, producer of the podcast and member of the Gym Plus Coffee community team. This week we have a very special episode. Co-founder Diarmuid McSweeney sits down with an old friend, Ronan Conway, to discuss the crew. Ronan is a team performance and self-development coach. It's a very interesting job that sees him working with professional sports teams, athletes, corporate teams, and even prisoners in Mountjoy. This is something he's very passionate about. Ronan loves sport and getting the most out of people in team environments. So much so that we've teamed up with him to work on a very exciting project with us called the Crew. Some of you might remember we put a call out to our community earlier this year to apply for the Crew. We were blown away by the responses. We had over 1,000 applicants. It was a great response, but it's also heartbreaking to see so many members of our community who were struggling or feeling a little bit lost with their physical and mental health. The World Health Organization has identified loneliness as being one of the biggest threats to people over the next few years. 1 in 7 people now report that they feel lonely most, if not all of the time. And Ireland is ranked as one of the loneliest countries in the world. It was these heartbreaking stats that spurred us on to set up the Crew. As you'll hear in the episode, the Crew is a 9-month programme designed to help people with their physical and mental health. We'll touch on the highs and lows of everyday life and how these can affect one's journey. We're hoping there will be a lot of takeaways and learnings for everyone who is following the series. And for anyone who's a little lost or struggling, hopefully it will inspire you to effect change or to seek the help that you require. You can find out more about the Crew on the Gym Plus Coffee website. Hope you enjoy.
Ronan Conway, you're very welcome to the Gym Plus Coffee podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is slightly different, I guess, in that I've known you for 25 years. Is that right? We went. Yeah. That makes us seem very old.
25
but
years.
We did meet in secondary school, I suppose.
We did.
But really winding back the clock, I've been fascinated to watch your career over the last kind of 10 or 12 years. And we're very lucky in Gym Plus Coffee that kind of journeys crossed, our paths crossed this year where we could work together, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We're really excited, I think, to announce and publish the Crew for the first time, which we've been working on for so long, and you've been a really, really, important part of that. But I suppose before we get into all of that, and there's a lot to discuss in that, do you want to give people maybe a whistle-stop tour of your career, like major kind of milestones, but also kind of where it all came from? Because we were chatting about it earlier, team performance and self-development coach. It's intriguing, but I suppose it's not 100% clear, from the outset, like what exactly that could involve. So do you want to give people a bit of a flavour of the kind of work you've been doing and also just the journey that you've been on?
Yeah, and just to start, I'm still trying to explain to my parents what I do, and it's a continuous evolution. So as you said, I went to school with yourself. I'm from Bishopstown in Cork, and when I look back, the majority of my upbringing was dominated by playing sports. So I played hurling for Bishopstown, and that was me walking around Bishopstown with a hurley in my hand, and like that's kind of what I remember for majority of the time, just like putting in a lot of hours in that area. And when I went to college, then I did commerce, and I had no idea what I wanted to do, to be honest, but I knew that was a general area that I could go down, or a general avenue. When I got out of college, then it became real. It was like, oh, what am I going to do now? But interestingly, while I was in college, I used to work as a care assistant with a great special needs organisation called the Cope Foundation. So every summer and some Christmases, I used to go there and work as a care assistant for those with mental and physical disabilities. And that was all while I was in college and playing sport, and I absolutely loved that, and I loved coming home from work every day and knowing that I had made some kind of a positive impact on some people's lives and vice versa. So again, going back to when I finished college, I was thinking, where will I go with my commerce degree? So I went away traveling, and I came back, and while I was away traveling in Australia, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to start steering this ship towards working with people, because that was an obvious passion of mine. So I went back studying psychology in Dublin, I used to get the bus up and down from Cork to Dublin every week, and whilst I was doing that then, I heard about a great organisation called the SOAR Foundation, and SOAR works with teenagers, and they're 12 years old now. So I spent 8 years working with teenagers delivering emotional intelligence workshops in schools all around the country. So essentially I'll give you a little idea what that was. Like, the first workshop I went to in a school, I went as a guest just to observe. And I watched 2 facilitators working with SOAR deliver an experience for teenagers whereby they spoke openly, 50 young people spoke openly about the ups and downs of teenage life. And I'd never heard anyone speak like that before in my whole life. I certainly didn't speak like that when I was in school. And just seeing the skill and the care and the nuance that was shown by the facilitators that day, I was thinking, I would absolutely love to do that. So that's why that's what I did for 8 years. I learned about facilitation, and I learned how to design and deliver the experiences for people.
There must be so many stories that you could share, like broadly, obviously, like are there kind of common themes that have come out of that work that you still take with you? Like, there must be so many patterns that young people are they've got challenges, they've got obstacles, they've got barriers, I'm sure they've got goals and motivations as well. Yeah. But I suppose what were the main parts that you took from that piece of work, or that's a long 8 years, but I'm sure you learned a huge amount.
Yeah. 3 areas that I would have learned about, and 3 kind of general patterns, is that, like, the first one would be pressure that young people feel. I'm sure even back in our time when we were in school there was similar pressures, but like what I noticed was pressures from academic pressures for some of them, family pressures for some of them, and also, pressure regarding their peers. So I find a lot of the time with young people that there is a pressure to conform and be similar or the same as other young people in the class, because when that happens there's safety. So people, you might notice going into school that there'll be people with the same jackets, same haircuts, and that all tells a story about people's want to belong to the class. So pressure is one thing. Secondly, at the moment for young people, like there is a certain cohort of teenagers, I would say they're around 17 or 18 now, that experienced the pandemic. And while they were going through school from Zoom, they missed out on 2 years of relationship building opportunities, but not just like relationship building for themselves, but that with relationship building comes skill building. So emotional intelligence skill building, the ability to read somebody's facial expressions and the cues that they're giving you, the ability to express yourself and even have a bit of crack in small talk. So all of these different skills that we take for granted when we come to school, there's a certain cohort of young people that are a bit behind now, I imagine. And thirdly, isolation. So I would definitely notice that young people and adults, you must have to admit, were highly digitally connected, but socially connected, that's a completely different ballgame. And a lot of the time young people, when they come to school and they might be carrying different issues and problems, a lot of the time they carry them with them themselves, and they might feel that they're doing it all on their own, and no one else has a similar experience to me, and no one else has similar problems at home, or insecurities, or doubt, or limiting beliefs. But the beautiful thing about working with SOAR was that we provided a space for people to take off the mask and actually be real about what's going on, and that can be emotional, but it can be the most inspiring, beautiful experiences to witness. And that's what kept me at SOAR for so long. I definitely hadn't had a job for 8 years of my life, but I just couldn't leave because what I was witnessing every week and the change that SOAR are making is massive.
Even the way you said it there, it's like taking the mask off, that kind of that phrase even sounds terrifying and also inspiring at the same time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like, are there tools? You obviously wouldn't ask you to share like any of the ins and outs of the work specifically, but like, are there tools that you're empowering people with in those workshops, or or is it just getting people to talk is like the first kind of
Yeah.
step?
Well, on the face of it, it looks like it's just getting people to talk, but there is frameworks behind all of this work. And one that I would have leaned on quite a bit, there was a paper written by a lady called Edith Gottberg, and she spoke about 3 areas of building resilience for young people. And it goes by I am, I have, I can. And so the I am part is helping young people to build a sense of identity, who they are. I have is helping people understand what resources are available to them, so who they have in their lives and the different support services that they have either in the school or outside of the school. And I can is building young people's sense of agency around what they can do, what they're capable of, and that might be soft skills like expressing themselves, or going to a friend after school if they need some support with something. So those 3 areas are definitely areas that we cover without even mentioning those words. We cover them. Yeah.
So you made the big decision then to leave SOAR after 8 years. I'm sure it was a very, very hard decision to make if the work was that fulfilling, like you're explaining. But since then, you've taken so many of those learnings, and it feels like you've just taken it in so many different directions. Do you want to give us a sense of the projects that you've been working on and in what direction it actually has brought you?
Yeah. So I'll just start where the jumping off point came for me. Around 4 years ago, I was down the country working with SOAR, running a workshop with, I think it was 50 girls in transition year. And we went in there to do individual self-development work. And initially when we walked into the room, there was clear disconnection and lack of trust and lack of understanding. By the end of the workshop, we left and the girls were quite literally skipping down the corridors, arm in arm with each other. And in that moment, I remember thinking, they're getting a sense of unity and togetherness and connection with each other here from a self-development program. So I was thinking, what would it be like to bring this style of facilitation approach to working in sports teams, to working with corporate teams? Because I started looking back on my sporting days and my corporate days, and I was thinking, I would have loved that. I would have loved someone to come in and facilitate these conversations. So at the moment, I work with sports teams, I work with workplace teams, and that's for teams. And then I also run self-development programs with groups of men in Mountjoy Prison. So that is less about the group dynamic, but it's more about the individual growth and learning for the men inside.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure a lot of people would have seen the project you were involved with for Mountjoy. It was on RT a few months ago, I think, but that was a serious journey, I'd imagine, for you.
Yeah.
But it was very clear, obviously, the impact that you've had there.
It's time for a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the episode. Just to let you know that we have a special discount code for podcast listeners. If you go to our website and enter POD15, you'll get 15% off. That's POD15 for 15% off on all Gym Plus Coffee websites. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and turn on that notification button so you never miss an episode. Now let's get back to the chat.
I reached out to you, I think it was January of this year, maybe somewhat out of the blue, although we had seen each other a couple of times last year, I think, but I knew obviously the work that you've been doing. This week we're going to launch The Crew, something that you've been working on with us, but I think some of the themes that have come out of this and that we've been observing in our own community is something that you've been interacting with a lot. You mentioned earlier on, isolation, loneliness, pressure. I think technology is a thing for young people, but probably even more so for adults. It's just not spoken about, and these are all kind of big themes that are coming up. But I suppose I'll just kind of introduce The Crew because it needs a bit of explaining. In January, we put a call out to our community, basically looking for applications. Are there people in our community that want to be part of a 9-month guided program to improve your physical and mental health? We're looking for a group of 8 people. I think we had close to 1,000 applications, and the application form and process was fairly lengthy, so it wasn't just people popping in an email address. So think we were kind of overwhelmed by the reaction. In a way, it was really encouraging for the project, but also, I think personally for me anyway, it was kind of devastating in a way to see like the themes and the answers that we got back. And I kind of broke them down into 4 areas. There's people are stuck in a COVID rut. You know, COVID was a really, really negative thing for a lot of people, and they haven't been able to get themselves out of it. That can be about like your mental health, your physical health, just bad habits that you picked up. Loneliness is a huge issue. People feel like they're more connected than ever, but they don't have a lot of friends. And obviously we did this in January, but only recently the European Commission brought out their first ever big loneliness study that was done in Europe, I think, and Ireland has been found to be the loneliest country in Europe. So almost 1 in 7 people say they feel lonely most or all of the time, which is a fairly shocking stat. The other point is help and support. People they feel like they're completely kind of on their own, which, you know, that's obviously not true, but that is people's perception. And then the 4th one is technology, just the negative impact I think technology is having on people's mental health, I suppose. Yeah. There's so many research reports coming out now, it's fairly alarming. But we have got to a group of 8 people. They're midway through the journey, and the structure of it is a number of workshops throughout the year, a number of kind of meetups or around activities that we do kind of once a month, and then fortnightly calls. But a lot of the key work, I guess, is being done with you, you know, in those workshops to really set up a proper foundation. Will you just give a sense to people of like how we've structured that and maybe just the themes in each workshop, so people can see how we've, I suppose, brought people into it, and then also kind of release them now to really try and achieve something with their own ambition. 100%.
And yeah, hats off to you for considering this project, and actually, secondly, for undertaking it, because it's I'm sure it was a hard job to whittle it down to 8 people as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was close to 1,000 applications, and obviously we went through rounds of interviews, but yeah, the 8 people that we kind of agreed on at the end, they're very representative of everyone that applied. You know, they're representative of like everyone in Ireland. You know, there's mums, there's young lads, there's dads. You know, there's like, I think everyone will relate to someone who's going through the journey. So it will be great to see the stories that really capture people's attention, I guess.
100%. Yeah. So the very used phrase, life is a journey, right? So the crew program for 9 months is a journey as well, and that's how I introduced myself to the 8 of them. The first time I met them, I said that like the next 8 months is like a journey up a mountain. So the peak is for you to be living a healthier, richer life mentally and physically. You as a team, you're going up the mountain as a bunch of 8. Like, how can you build a supportive environment whereby you're working together, helping each other achieve their goals? And so that's what we did. So I'll go through the 4 actual topics of the headings. The first workshop that we did was all about building interpersonal connection. So you speak about loneliness and isolation. The opposite of that would be real, meaningful relationships with each other. So not just on the surface level. We're talking about like really deepening the roots between each other. So understanding each other's paths thus far. What are some of the influences that we have in our lives at the moment? So what are our current situations? And really just talking with gravity about that in the first session. And the aim of that was to build a team unit, but also build that sense of belonging for people, the crew. So yeah, that was really moving and beautiful to watch. The second session is all about going from an A to B. So like, what is, each of them is going to have a different goal, and each of them does have a different goal, but what is the goal? What is the vision for each of these individuals? What do they want to get out of this? Some of some of the responses were like just working on physical health. Some of them is just build self-esteem. And I won't give any spoilers, but it was really great to see people like actually pressing pause on their busy lives and actually like saying, taking a bit of time to reflect and say, what do I want for the next 9 months? So third session will be all about like, what are the blocks standing in the way of these individuals getting towards their B? So getting up to the top of the mountain. You know, we all, every one of us, I believe, has, you know, different, you know, limiting beliefs that might tug at us or nag at us and like say, oh, maybe it's not the right time to do that, or, you know, maybe you're not good enough to do that, or, you know, you don't deserve that. But it's just to start unpacking what those beliefs and blockers are, either inside of us or externally, and how do we navigate them. And then the final session is all about looking back on the last 9 months. So like, how has that journey been once you're hopefully up towards the top of the mountain? Like, what has this experience been like? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about other people? And after you look back, the guys are gonna be looking forward and saying, okay, so what's next? And who knows what's gonna come there.
And there's lots of highs and lows, right? There's like roller coaster in amongst all that, because when you talk about the walking up the mountain analogy, a lot of people can think, right, we're going in one direction here. You know, yeah. This is just, we're going up, we're going up, we're going up. And it's just natural and it's authentic that there's ups and downs. It really is a roller coaster. We've found it as challenging as it is rewarding. And everyone who's part of the program, part of the crew, I think is finding that as well, you know. And if it was easy, this wouldn't exist, you know, because we jump on these kind of fortnightly calls, I guess, with the group. Everyone checks in, everyone has a buddy that they can contact more regularly than that. And obviously the WhatsApp group is going to, you know, much more frequently than every 2 weeks. But everyone is kind of having highs and lows at different times, you know, and like that's just life, I guess, really, isn't it?
100%. And like, it's a really privileged position to be in, to get to the point where you can work on your mental and physical health. You know, not everyone can do that. So it's like, it's real privilege for them to, in my opinion, to be doing something like this, you know, because there's so many other factors in life that can be a storm as you're going up the mountain. So like family, friends, you know, personal issues, work issues, and that's just life. And it's never, as you said, it's not going to be linear. There's going to be storms, there's going to be times you get lost, there's going to be times that you want to just walk back down to the bottom, and it's all about just like keeping that momentum. And that's what's great about doing it in a group setting as opposed to individually, is that they can act as that supportive network for each other.
Absolutely. And that's actually, I suppose, what we're learning more and more, is that we were getting this feedback anecdotally, let's say, from our community, and just observing different trends. But what's kind of changed, I suppose, is a lot of the research that's coming out at the moment just about loneliness and social connection. So everyone wants to improve their physical health, everybody wants to improve their mental health generally. But if you don't have those social connections, it's such a damaging effect on your health. Like it's being proven. It's not just a thing to say anymore. It's been proven through research. You know, I think it was there was a friendship study done by YouGov in the UK, just looking at over the last 30 years. I think there's a 30% drop in the number of people you consider to be your close friend. So, like almost 1 in 10 people in the UK say they don't don't consider someone to be a close friend.
Yeah.
And then the connections with that is much higher chance of not being physically active, much higher chance than as a result of suffering from a serious disease or disability or something like that. I mean, the knock-on effects are just, they're plain to see, but I think no one has really thought of that all the way through. It's kind of more been a nice to have, whereas now it's something that we really have to address. And certainly when we started this, you know, bringing a group together is a nice, fun way to do it. But some of the feedback we've got from the guys already is that, like, actually the connection of the group is even maybe more powerful than their own personal goals that they're trying to achieve. So yeah,
that offers a sense of meaning, like, you know, that sense of purpose when you are responsible for holding somebody else accountable and being that emotional support for somebody to support. That's also hugely meaningful for your goals, you know. I find. But there was a research by Vivek Murthy. He's the US Surgeon General. He spoke quite recently about loneliness and isolation in the States, and how that prolonged loneliness can be as damaging on mortality rates as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. You know, and it's really interesting. Have you seen the documentary Chimp Nation?
I haven't seen that.
It's I rarely watch anything, but I watched a 4-part documentary about chimpanzees in Uganda. It's on Netflix. It's amazing. This is not a plug, but so we share 98.8% of our DNA with chimpanzees. Okay, and there's been research done about the effect of loneliness on chimpanzees, and it's shown that when a chimp is experiencing severe loneliness, that it has significant impact on their stress levels, their immune system, and also their cognitive functioning. You know, and going back to that documentary, there was a part in that documentary whereby they captured some amazing footage, okay, of like a tribe of 50 chimpanzees, and they followed them over months, and 9 out of 10 of them were socially engaged with each other, and they were what they call grooming each other. So like they were combing each other's hair and picking the nits out of each other's hair. But like that's not just a functional process, it's actually a relationship building opportunity, and it's highly social. So like there was this one chimp called Gus, and he was out on his own, and he was completely detached from the whole tribe of chimpanzees. And it was actually really moving to see, because he was lying on a branch on his own, and you could see his body language was completely folded over. And at one point he went up to the alpha male and he tried to groom the alpha male, and the alpha male turned away and walked away, and he just lay dejected, and he was almost withering physically as well as emotionally. Now I know that's an anecdotal example, but like that's true of us human beings too. It's like it's like watering a plant. We need to keep watering it for ourselves, but we also can have the opportunity to water it for other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that, like in terms of how people are interacting with each other in the group, motivating one another, when they might even feel down themselves, that they're motivating other people. But I suppose just at different times you're going to have energy for yourself and energy for others, and then as soon as you feel that sense of belonging, you buy into someone else's story, so you're all in at that point.
100%.
But yeah, I'm really excited to see the reaction when we launch this. Even in next month, we'll be sharing more, particularly from the second workshop you've done with the guys around goal setting, and I know that's a huge theme for people, and a part where people really struggle, like just getting it off the ground, getting started. Well, my observation during the workshop was that people were coming to that having done some prep work. They had a very clear idea of what their goals were going to be for the program, for the summer, what they were trying to make a difference within their lives. And then having gone through some exercises in the workshop and having kind of really thrashed it out, let's say, with the group, some people left that they having really surprised themselves, completely different goals to what they thought they were going to be working on. How does that happen, or why does that happen, and what do you think is the kind of dynamic there that kind of unlocks a lot of things for people?
Yeah, so some people might have come to the workshop with maybe a well thought out cerebral plan, but when you set up an environment like we have with the crew, workshops where people can feel psychologically safe to really reflect and dig a little deeper into their thoughts, feelings and emotions towards the goal, it gives each other permission to go deeper yourself. So if I'm going a bit deeper on my process and I'm being honest about my goals and what maybe is blocking me, and I express that to the group of 8, it's going to have a huge impact on the safety for other people to do the same. And so like you'd have different characters in the crew that will lead the way regarding stepping out on that ledge and showing a bit of courage, and then it just adds permission for everyone else to do the same.
Yeah, I think just having, I wouldn't say it worked, because that's not what it is, but having been in such kind of close contact with them over the last few months, they really, really are inspiring us as a team. You know, we've got very, very unique stories there, but like Sarah, Sinead, Trina, Shauna, Shane, Onyinye, Ronan, Jack, they're all very different people, and they've just bonded together really, really quickly. So I think following their journey for the rest of the year is going to be fascinating for people, and hopefully people like just learn a lot from it, because you'll see yourself in one of those people, you know. So but I think we're only, unfortunately, that's only 8 people, you know, and we're scratching the surface, I think, really, in terms of some of the issues around loneliness and social isolation out there, which is motivating in one way and also kind of you know, kind of gutting in other ways. I have one last question to ask you, which I'm interested to hear your answer to this one. I've kind of asked everybody who's kind of come on, who we've been chatting to. We've built the Gym Plus Coffee brand, I suppose, around that sense of community, but around the idea to make life richer. What do those words mean to you? And you can define them and kind of define it any way you want, just a gut reaction, or maybe in the context of some of the work you've been doing, but just that phrase, make life richer, what kind of comes to mind when you hear those words?
We've said the word relationships a few times in this conversation, but for me it would be relationship, and what I mean by that is making life richer would look like building a healthy relationship with myself, being comfortable, healthy, comfortable with myself, healthy, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then it comes down to relationship with other people. I find, like, you know, there's a lady called Bronnie Ware, and she wrote that book about the 5 regrets of the dying. I know it's quite morbid, but it's really rich and powerful. And one of them is like not maintaining relationships with family and not living a life true to yourself. So I find that maintaining those relationships as best as I can with friends and family, and that's priceless to me, to be honest. Yeah.
Love that answer. I think that's very, very true. Ronan Conway, thank you very much for joining us, and thanks a million as well for being a part of the crew. We genuinely wouldn't have been able to do it without you, and having you as kind of our shepherd along the way has been really, really powerful. So thanks for joining us on that as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Gym Plus Coffee podcast. If you enjoy these conversations, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and turn on that notification button so you never miss an episode. Don't forget, we have a special discount code for podcast listeners. Go to our website and enter POD15 for 15% off. That's POD15 for 15% off on all Gym Plus Coffee websites. Thanks for listening.